Hey everybody, this is Cecil Alexander with Jazz Lesson Videos, and today we're going to be looking at some tips for improving your blues playing. Blues tunes are really popular forms in jazz, and they're pretty much called at any jam session that you might go to. If you want to dig a little bit deeper into any of these concepts that we're going to talk about, you can feel free to check out my latest resource with Jazz Lesson Videos, 25 Blues Etudes. In the resource, you can find etudes on blues in several different tempos as well as different styles, including a minor blues, major blues, as well as the bird blues. All of the etudes come with backing tracks and recordings. So if you want to dig a little bit deeper into any of these concepts, you can feel free to check out the full resource and use the coupon code BLUES5 for an additional $5 off. So the first blues form that we're going to take a look at is a slow 1-4-5 blues. And this is really common with guitar players. You'll find a lot of different recordings of prominent blues guitarists playing over this form. People like the three kings of blues, Albert King, Freddie King, and B.B. King, as well as one of my personal favorites, Buddy Guy. So first, we're going to play an example of me playing one of the etudes from the resource, and then we're going to break down some of the concepts that I'm using. So the first concept that I'd like to draw attention to that I'm using in this slow blues etude is the use of auxiliary blues scales, or blues scales with auxiliary notes. So the blues scale, as you might be used to seeing it, is going to be this scale. So it have on E, 1, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 5, and flat 7. So it's a 6-note scale, but you can add auxiliary notes to this just to kind of color the scale a little bit more. And this is something that you'll find in, prominent recordings of some of those blues players that I mentioned before. A lot of times they'll take liberties and add things like the major third to their line, so G sharp, the natural 6, and sometimes even the natural 9. So you hear people like Albert King or Stevie Ray Vaughan play that line quite a bit. So just kind of bending up to the 5th of the blues scale and then playing this kind of decoration around the root and the 5th. And then up to that natural 9. And then they'll kind of use the flat 9 as another decoration. Right, so from the root up to the flat 9. And then down the scale to the 5th. Again, just a kind of cool way to color your lines a little bit more and make it so that you're not just always using those same 6 notes. A lot of times these auxiliary notes kind of have directions that they want to move in specifically. So for example, the 6th usually wants to move down to the 5th, but sometimes in some cases it'll want to move down to the flat 3rd. You'll hear this kind of line a lot. So that's going from the 6th down to the flat 3rd, and then the same thing down the octave. But, again, every one of those auxiliary notes and even the regular notes within the blues scale kind of have tendencies to them. So another example would be like the flat 5th, sometimes wants to move up to the 5th, sometimes wants to move down to the 4th. Or just 2 examples of some different decorations you can do around that note. So in the etude, in the second chorus, I use an example of some of these auxiliary notes over in E7. I'm starting my line on the 4th. And again, just kind of decorating that 4th, going back and forth between the 4th and the root. And then I grab the flat 3rd, and then I slide up to the major 3rd. So that's another example of a kind of a tendency tone within the scale. When you want to introduce that major sound, the flat 3rd wants to move up to that major sound, right? That's kind of a more melodic way of getting into it than just throwing it out of the blue. So then after that, I hop up to the 5th, and then I move into more of a minor sound on the way down with adding in that flat 5 and the flat 3rd down the octave. So you can kind of mix and match those auxiliary notes in different ways to create these really, interesting, almost angular sounding phrases. The next concept that I use on this slow blues etude is an example of call and response. Call and response is, as the title implies, you have a call and you have a response or a melodic statement followed by another logical melodic statement that kind of answers. So question to answer is kind of another way of thinking of call and response. But I have my call in this example that happens on A7 in the first chorus. Right, so that's just decorating that fourth of the scale. And then hopping up to the root. And then my response is going to be the root down the octave. There's my response. So one more time, the call. And then the response. And that's just kind of a good way of making sure that your blues playing is vocal sounding and melodic and logical, because a lot of times, the prominent blues guitarists and even blues-influenced jazz guitarists are emulating blues vocalists. So the way that you might do those inflections with your voice and the way that they might use call and response in a melody or embellishments that they might do in a melody statement. So I hope those two concepts will help you play more confidently over the slow 1-4-5 blues form. Let's check out our next concept. So the next blues form that we're going to take a look at is the bird blues. And this is a really important blues form in jazz to learn because it has so many differences from the regular jazz blues. But a lot of different, contrafacts are written on this set of chord changes, including the tune Freight Train, which is written by Tommy Flanagan. It's a bird blues in the key of A flat. Usually the bird blues is going to be in the key of F, but occasionally you'll see some different keys. So the main difference right off the bat is going to be, instead of having a 1-7 chord, we have a 1 major 7 chord. Right, so this immediately ties this a little bit closer to, like the Great American Songbook and the bebop repertoire. So we have 1 major 7, and then we're going to have a minor 2-5 to set up 6 minor 7. Then we're going to have a series of 2-5s to eventually get to 4-7. So, right, so D, G, C, F into B flat. Then after B flat 7, we have this another series of descending 2-5s, but this time instead of in whole steps, we move down in half steps. So B flat minor, E flat 7, A minor 7, D7, A flat minor, D flat 7, and then finally G minor into C7, and then our turnaround at the end. So 1, 5-7 of 2, 2 minor 7, 5-7. So a lot of harmonic movement here, but we're also going to talk about some different ways of just getting around this harmony a little bit better. So here's an example of me playing through one of the bird blues etudes from this section of the resource, and afterwards we're going to talk about some concepts for improving your soloing through the form. So the first concept that I want to talk about for improving your soloing through the bird blues form is the use of delayed resolutions. And delayed resolutions can be especially useful when you're playing over fast-moving chord changes like this, because it kind of just gives you a little bit more time to think. So basically what a delayed resolution is you have one chord change, so say E minor 7 flat 5, A7 moving into D minor, and when you get to the D minor, you can still be on A7, right? So an example might be something like this. Right, so on D minor 7, I play basically just a couple beats of A7 still, and I resolve to D minor 7 on that A natural, right? And I can see that because I'm still highlighting some of those altered tensions from the A7, right? The flat 5 and the flat 9. And then eventually resolving to the 5th of that D minor 7. So in this example, I use a delayed resolution on the 7 minor 7 flat 5. So it's just going to set up that 2-5 into D minor, And I do so by hitting what's, a really dissonant note against E minor 7 flat 5, and that's going to be the natural fifth. So in E minor 7 flat 5, you have B flat, and my line highlights the natural fifth. So I hit it right on beat 1, right as part of a kind of decorated enclosure. So I resolve to the flat fifth of E minor 7 flat 5 on beat 2, and after that I just go up the scale of kind of like an A half whole diminished. Go into the 11th of D minor 7. So, and then you also have another delayed resolution on D minor 7. So, G is not necessarily a dissonant note, but it's not really a note that gives you an idea of what chord you're playing over if you're playing over D minor 7. So I resolve technically to that D minor 7 on beat 2 when I hit A, right? So that's just kind of a, not necessarily a way of playing outside of the harmony, although it could be, but it's just kind of a way of creating more forward motion, more interest melodically and harmonically in your lines. The next idea I want to take a look at is the idea of simplifying the harmony. And I think simplifying harmony can be really useful on bebop tunes with fast moving harmony like this, where you have, a lot of these one measure 2-5-1s. So an example could be in the second measure where you have that fast 2-5 into D minor, or even the next couple of measures. That B flat 7 kind of feels like the first moment where you can kind of breathe a little bit, even though it's not that long in duration. So usually when I have those fast 2-5s like that, I'm just going to be thinking of one of those chords. So not both the 2 and the 5, but either just the 2 or the 5, right? So on a progression like E minor 7 flat 5 to A7, I'll usually just be thinking of the A7 because that's going to create a lot of tension and allow me to set up the D minor 7 logically, right? I'd have a strong land on one of the chord tones of that chord. And then again on those fast moving 2-5s that we have here, D, G, C, F, I'm just thinking of the 5 chords again, right? So G7, F7. So now if you look at just the first couple of measures of the tune simplified, you have F major 7, A7, and then G7, F7 into B flat 7, right? So way fewer chords when you take out those 2 minor 7s, but you could also do the opposite of that and just play off of the 2 minor 7 sound rather than the 5-7 sound. But the line in particular that I want to draw attention to is an example where I do just that on the 4 minor flat 7-7. I play this idea that really strongly gives you an idea of a minor sound. So, right. So that's highlighting like the 9th of B flat minor 7, and then going down a D flat major 7 arpeggio, hitting that 9th on the way down, down the octave as well. And then I just do that, parallel, basically just moving, descending chromatically through the rest of the changes. So. With a little bit of rhythmic variation, but little details like that are a little bit easier to think of when you're just thinking of, rather than all those moving passing chords and everything, right? So hopefully those two concepts helped improve your soloing over the bird blues form. So that concludes today's video. Hopefully all of these concepts and etudes helped improve your soloing over the various blues forms. And again, if you feel like digging a little bit deeper into any of these etudes or resources, you can check out my latest resource with jazz lesson videos, 25 blues etudes, and you can use the coupon code BLUES5 for an additional $5 off. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.